The views expressed on this channel are only a few of many possible ways to achieve your desired outcome. The suggestions present on this channel are not one size fits all. So, let's begin. All right, so hi, this is the Introduction to Shadow Work course. We're going to be diving into a lot of deep topics in this course. We're probably going to go a little bit slower with this one than we do with the money manifestation, the energy protection, and the reality shifting courses, which are all courses I offer, by the way. We're going to go slower with this one just because the topics will be so heavy and they're going to be personal. And I want to really give you time to like think and marinate between sessions. So this is something you really don't want to rush through, and we're not going to rush through these units at all. We're really going to take our times. So this is the reminders page. We will be focusing on a lot of deep topics in this course, so we'll be taking it slow and easy for the first few lessons. We're going to be taking the entire course slow. To be honest, in an ideal pacing of this course, you should have time to think about the question without having to answer right away, because we're going to be proposing questions at the end of each unit. You should be able to think about each question before feeling like you have to answer right away. Then you should give yourself time to answer authentically. Then you should have more time to think. And then, should you have a change of heart, or not even a change of heart, but even just an enhanced perspective on yourself, you should be able to add that to your answer too. So maybe about a week to 2 weeks between each unit. And it sounds like it's going to be like a long time, but trust me, you really will need that time to really think and not force any thoughts. So, of course, be on your Zoom at 10. Keep up, do your homework. The homework assignments will be fun. They're going to be short and sweet. Not really for me, but for you to deepen your shadow work journey. So, of course, stay up to date on your studies, stay hydrated. Yes, you can eat, ask questions, and participate and have fun. So, these units I was talking about, the first unit is going to be Why Am I? So, it's understanding how you view yourself. Because this is shadow work, we're probably going to be focusing less on the positives initially, and we're going to be focusing more on the negatives, the wounds, right? So why am I so, what, however people have made you feel, why am I so, lacking in this area or lacking in that area? Even though you aren't, we all have wounds we kind of need to work through, right? So it's going to be the why am I so. And your first homework assignment may actually be just take a page and don't be afraid to let it out. Why am I? Why am I so this? Why am I so that? Um, and really let loose, because it's not about you believing those things about yourself, but it's about getting the wounds out and onto paper or somewhere you can read them. Uh, so you can just kind of see what you're working with wound wise, because the goal is to work through our shadow wounds. And if you don't know what the wounds are, we can't exactly address them. So, first homework assignment is why am I? Why am I so? You can have some positives on your list, but because it's a shadow work, we're gonna start with the negatives we have been made to believe about ourselves. So why am I so, clumsy? Why am I so this? Why am I so that? Then the next unit is going to be why won't I? So it's understanding the things you avoid. Why won't I do this? Why won't I do that? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Uh we all have this. Even the best people have why won't eyes or why can't eyes. Because we all avoid different things for different reasons. There's not a person on this earth without a shadow, and there's not a person on this earth without things that they avoid. So if you want to get a head start on this one, you can. If you can't get enough of your list after making the why am I list, then go ahead and jump into this one. But no rush, because we're going to come to this one when we are in the second unit. The third unit is going to be why can't I allow? So it's understanding the things you reject. So there are things you avoid that you don't even, go near, you don't touch, you completely avoid them. Then there's things you reject. So there's things that come to you that you push away. So those are things you reject. And rejection is not bad, because sometimes we reject things for good reason. Think about people who are lactose intolerant, right? Ooh, think about the people who are lactose intolerant. Their body rejects dairy, And there's nothing wrong with that because their body does not have the enzymes capable of digesting the dairy. So it's a good thing that their body rejects it because they can't do anything with that food, right? They can't do anything with that cheese, with that milk. They can't, harvest it for nutrients. They can't do anything with it. So the body forces it out, expels it out. That's why you get nauseous and you want to throw up. That's why you have to go to the bathroom, you might get diarrhea because your body wants to expel it out, right? But because this is shadow work course, the rejection is about things that you might desires such as love and other things like that that you reject as a result of wounds. And then finally we're going to be doing I am, so it's understanding your power, right? We're going to keep this one vague for now because you really don't need to get ahead of yourself and jump to like what this final unit would be about. So the grade breakdown is going to be pretty easy. I will not be grading you, but if you want to grade yourself in A+ in shadow work, if you want to grade yourself, you can use this chart here. So homework assignments, like I said, are going to be quick and easy, and they're actually just going to help you jumpstart or kickstart your shadow work journey. So the first homework assignment is going to be the why am I. So find a blank page, or if you want, download a free app called Evernote and make yourself a list completely free. You don't have to buy a notebook, you don't have to buy pens. Make yourself a note of why am I so, and just really let it out, okay? Really let it out. Not to make yourself sad. Ooh, let me slide this over so you can see the 20%. Okay. Not to make yourself, can I actually make this screen small? Can I make it small? Sorry, I did not adjust this ahead of time. I actually have adjusted this ahead of time, but I've adjusted it and readjusted it so many times that that I've kind of lost track. So you can see it, you can see the page. Little technical difficulties, but this would not be an online course if it wasn't for little technical difficulties. This is the ambiance, right? This is the experience. So anyways, project 1 is going to be a dot story, which we will get into later. Don't get ahead of yourself. Then a midterm, and then the project 2 is the shadow work progress journal. We're going to dive into it, so don't worry about it. And then this is going to be the basic grade breakdown. All right, so within the units, these are the chapters we're going to be these are the chapters we're going to be discussing. Introduction to shadow work, which will be today. What is the shadow, which will also be today, and then safety. So these units here are areas where your shadow may be damaged. We're about to get into the shadow, but these are areas where your shadow may be damaged. So you may be experiencing difficulties in your life in terms of safety, in terms of creativity, especially if you have a lot of art block or creative block, or you have that sensation that you want to create, but you don't quite know what you want to create. Then you may have wounds in the sense of willpower, which is kind of getting yourself jump started. And we all go through these slumps. So just because you experience art block or willpower blocks, or you're hard with the empathy, it's difficult for you to connect with your sense of empathy, doesn't necessarily mean you are wounded, because it is part of the human experience to kind of, I wouldn't say fall short and I wouldn't say lack, but it is part of the human experience to experience different levels of creativity. So, you experience that time where you're bursting with creativity and you're just creating so much, and then you experience that time where you're completely blocked. You got a creative block. You have that time when you're bursting with willpower and you're getting so much done and you're go, go, go. And then you have times where you're unmotivated, which it is part of the human experience. So the reason these sections are in the shadow work course, or if these problems are ongoing, let the truck pass. Let the truck pass. We like outdoors ambiance, but it's if those issues are ongoing and you can't really resolve them, So then we're going to have a unit on expression. So these are my own definitions, but they will be the definitions we'll be working with in this course. So creativity versus expression. So if you have a problem with creativity in regard to this course, it's going to be, for me in this course, subconscious. You create your art, your art that you create carries your subconscious beliefs and subconscious desires with it. It's kind of, your art is kind of charged with your subconscious. So having a creative block in regards to this course would be kind of like having a disconnect with what your subconscious is kind of trying to speak to you. Having a disconnect with being able to express the subconscious. Whereas the direct expression here would be like being able to articulate, verbally, or if you're, I don't know, we're going to focus on verbally, but say you have some other, I don't know, emotional expression. So like emotional expressions, like facial expressions you make with your face, body language, vocal tone, vocabulary in general, and it doesn't have anything to do with vocabulary level. It's more to do with if sometimes you can articulate yourself and then other times you find that you cannot articulate yourself. That's the expression, that kind of direct communication of what's on your consciousness. Creativity would be like an issue with your subconscious block, whereas the expression unit is going to be kind of a disconnect from what you consciously know you want to say. And, without diving too deep, say you pull up to the drive through and you want, I don't know, a 10-piece nugget and a pack of ketchup. Or you pull up and you somehow do not get those words out, that would be a problem with your expression because consciously it's not a secret from yourself that you want that, but you can't say it, you can't get it out. Then we're going to have the unit on reflection, and then finally we're going to end with knowing yourself and mastering the self. But we can't jump to mastery until we got to go through the ugly bits. We got to go through the ugly bits a little bit, right? So let's jump into the introduction. So what is the shadow? So the shadow is basically made up all of the abandoned parts of yourself. These are all the aspects of your identity that you have been made shameful of. I don't know, like a loose example would be like if as a kid you were a very happy kid and you had a very particular laugh or style of laughing, and one day your dad says to you, you've got an ugly laugh, and you internalize that and you don't really know what to do with that, so you start laughing a little quieter. Then one day at school at recess, someone does something really funny and you let out this big laugh, and then everyone turns to look at you and they're kind of like, oh, that's what you laugh like. So the first comment was kind of like the initial wound, which started up that shadow. And then the second and any subsequent responses are going to be kind of solidifying that wound, because if one person says you have an ugly laugh and then three other people who are completely unrelated also think that your laugh is ugly, you will then begin to believe that there's something wrong with you and that there's something wrong with your laugh, when in reality a laugh is just a laugh and we all have different ways of existing, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of where shame comes from. So your laugh goes from just a habit you have and just a thing about you, it goes from just a general trait to a wound. It goes to something shameful. Well, I can't laugh like this because there's something wrong with it. And you don't quite understand what is wrong with your laugh. Hint, there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't understand what is wrong to make people react the way they do, right? And so that becomes a trigger for you. Your laugh may become a trigger. And then from there, you hear somebody laugh and they have like a cute laugh, or I don't know, or somebody laughs and then everyone goes, oh my God, their laugh is so adorable. That is then a trigger for you because, your brain doesn't understand, and especially your inner child doesn't understand, why their laugh got praise and your laugh got essentially ridiculed. And it will get to the point where even people with your exact laugh, you may be even kinder to them than you are to yourself, you know what I mean? Because you're now filtering everything through the lens of something is wrong with me, right? Not people have a problem with my laugh for some reason, but something is wrong with me. And so that's where the shadow comes from. It's not even bad things about yourself. It's just over time things you've been made to not accept about yourself. And you can't really divorce yourself from all of those things. So you have to put them somewhere. And so, it's like when you clean your room in a rush and you shove everything in the closet. Well, all the mess, the room looks clean. You look like a presentable person. You have, a normal, quote unquote, normal laugh now. But everything's still shoved in the closet. And if you keep shoving things in there, eventually, the door is going to burst open, the door is going to fall down. Or worse, you get triggered enough and you spill it out yourself. You know what I mean? You start talking about the way people laugh and stuff like that. So A shadow can grow to operate on shame, anger, and guilt, but often when we are triggered, it's the shadow that is being triggered. Um, no, lots of things can trigger us. If you have a phobia, like a needle phobia or a spider phobia, seeing a spider does not mean you have like a spider related wound. You don't have to have a history with spider bites to be afraid of getting a spider bite. Uh, you know, so not every time you're triggered means that you have like a shadow wound. Sometimes something just, bothers you, which we all have as humans. But it's easier to be triggered by things that irritate your shadow because your shadow is essentially made up of wounds, emotional wounds, And if you've ever put on your shirt, you don't think twice about it. You just put on your shirt and you go about your day. But if you have a very bad sunburn, every little touch hurts really bad. So it doesn't have to be a big touch, it can be a little touch. Every little touch hurts really, really, really bad. So that's why even small offenses can trigger like very big responses. So take that girl with the cute laugh. So she has a very cute laugh. She's very adorable. She's very cute. She laughs. And then, that person whose laugh was made fun of, they go, what a stupid laugh. Or they say something very bad, what a stupid laugh. And then you're looking at them like, well, why are you so angry just because she has a cute laugh? It seems like a disproportionate response to what is going on. Um, and in fact, it is a response as if there were a threat when there was no threat at all. You know what I mean? And it's because there is a wound. So when you have that sunburn, remember, uh, you're probably paying attention to how you walk through doorways. You're probably, if you're moving in rooms, you're probably paying attention to how close the walls are or how far the walls are or how close something is to touching you because you are aware that, your skin is burned and you don't want to touch anything. So you're hyper vigilant. Uh, you're very aware of how your shirt is laying on your body because you don't want it rubbed the wrong way. Hyper vigilant. And it's the same thing with this shadow. Um, your wounds will have you hyper vigilant, right? But we're gonna dive into it. But the shadow is not your enemy. In fact, the shadow is born as a way for you to protect yourself. If you learn that, embracing a trait about yourself will bring you harm and rejection. You will try to conceal and express those traits in order to succeed. So this kind of goes back to when humans were herd creatures. I don't want to use the word herd, community creatures. So if you go back far enough, humans needed to be grouped together to survive, right? Humans needed somebody to have a skill in this, like woodworking. They needed a person who had a skill in gathering berries really quickly. They needed a person who had a skill in gathering, hunting meat really well. And then they needed somebody who was like the doctor of the group that, knew all the medicines and herbs and they knew how to identify plants. And then, you get all these people together and, everyone has their specialty. Then you have a whole community. And you didn't want to be separated from the community because there would be like bears and lions and tigers and stuff like that. And, even though like predators could stalk the herd, it was much harder for a predator to find a way to get into the herd to like pick off someone to like, eat them. So that's why you didn't want to be left out. But also, if you were left out from the herd, you were away from the herbalist, the doctor. So if you, fell into a patch of poison ivy, or if you were hungry in the wild and you couldn't identify poisonous mushrooms, you didn't have that knowledge with you, that expertise, that person with that knowledge, and you ate it like a poisonous mushroom, you could die. Uh, you didn't have just all those, that community around you, and so I think that's why humans have a still have an innate fear of rejection, not just because rejection hurts, because it does, but because humans for the longest time needed community to survive. And so that's kind of where the shadow comes from because if you well going back to the laugh, I don't know what else. If you have a certain trait and you recognize that you get rejection from your community, your classmates or your parents or whatever, for a certain harmless trait, your body realizes that it will then tell you, well, you need to hide it. you need to hide it so you can, whatever, make it within the community. And even if it is a harmless trait, you can probably hear some going ons outside, but that's just the ambience. I love outdoor ambience, so you just gotta be okay with it. But and so I think that's why our shadow was created. Um, and this is just a theory, so feel free to leave your theories below in the comments. But I will also be starting up a Discord soon, so you can discuss in the Discord your feelings about that. But I think that's why we have, sometimes shame and guilt protects us. Sometimes it does. Sometimes. But when it gets out of hand, uh shame and guilt over just like harmless traits or harmless personality habits or things like that, it can get to the point where it's crushing us, right? And so that's why your shadow is not your enemy, because if you understand that your shadow is there to essentially kind of protect you, it's just kind of not doing it in the greatest way, then you understand why so many people find that shadow work is cathartic and healing, because once you realize the shadow is not your enemy and it is in fact trying to be your friend, then you can work with it in the way you need to work with it to become stronger, because it's not about destroying the shadow or getting rid of the shadow, it's about strengthening the shadow. Okay, so I really wanted to go into that because the whole basis of that page is the philosophy behind the entire course, right? So, however, as many of us know, repressing and concealing your true self will do damage in the long run. This is why it is ideal to learn, evolve, and grow. And that's what we do our whole life in cycles. We learn, we evolve, and grow. But importantly, that I want to add is this. Ooh. We experience, learn, evolve, and grow. And a lot of people try to avoid the experience uh, portion of this process because it is a risk. There's a risk in everything. There's a risk in every experience. Big risk, little risk, small risk. There's risk and reward. Um, and the mystery of it all is terrifying. The mystery of it all is very terrifying. But as soon as you understand that experience, no matter what comes out of an experience, it is something you can learn from, and then it's something you can turn into a tool, and then it's something you can use to evolve, and it's something that you can then use to grow more powerful with. Um, you won't jump into things willy nilly, but you will be able to do things with more intent, with more decisiveness, rather than saying, I want a specific outcome. You will be able to experience things with that mindset of, this could help me grow in the long run. So here's how I might want to go about this. It'll inform how you partake in experiences. It won't make you, hopefully, it won't lower your inhibitions and make you just jump into stuff willy nilly, but it'll also make you, less afraid to partake in experiences. You'll just have a more informed process of looking at experiences. So the shadow exists because you cannot successfully throw away those parts of yourself. You can only push them away. The reason concealing your true self too long does damage is because it is already a source of shame and pain, as it is in this state. And holding onto the shadow without working with it to resolve your issues will only make the anger and resentment fester. And it's anger and resentment towards yourself, right? So you don't like your laugh, you don't like, I don't know, you don't like your voice, you don't like your teeth. Even though you could technically get your teeth fixed, we live in a world of like dental possibilities or whatever it is. The real pain does not come from the fact that usually it does not come from the fact that your teeth are crooked. The real pain comes from the fact that this is how your teeth grew and you really had no control over it. And you were essentially rejected over something you have no control over. Now, I'm not saying getting your teeth quote unquote fixed or straightened won't help you feel better, but the deeper inner emotional pain you feel might actually just lead back to a abandonment wound or rejection wound, as in, this is how I grew naturally, and people essentially made me believe that this was a source of shame, aka the shape of my teeth, my nose, anything. But it doesn't always have to be things that you can't control. People can make fun of the way you dress, like your fashion sense. And I mean, even though it's something that you do have control over, it's more like a shame as coming from a place of, well, I'm not hurting anybody with my fashion choices. So why is this being made, a problem, you know, with my classmates? Why are they making a problem? Why are my parents making fun of the way I dress? When it's more like that abandonment rejection issue. We're going to get into it. So you begin to hate yourself for harmless things about yourself that you've been told are shameful or embarrassing. As you embark on your manifestation journey, you will find your shadow self to be an extremely powerful ally. Yes. Uh, so you may or may not already consider yourself a powerful manifester, but if you ever want like a super huge boost, like a super huge power up, it's becoming friends with your shadow self, tracing those wounds to the source, and then working with that source to turn those wounds into tools you can use to kind of strengthen you on your journey. And like I said, we do have different courses on this channel. So we have the reality shifting course, we have the manifestation course, we have the uh, energy protection course, and then we've got a couple others that are also in the works. So keep in mind, you don't have to do the shadow work first. You can do them simultaneously. There is no right or wrong order, but I think doing your shadow work concurrent or before jumping into the money manifestation course may help you, but it's up to you to decide that order. So, some say a society is only as strong as its weakest link. And that's basically meaning that the lowest, quote unquote, in a society is indicative or indicates how well a society is doing. So if the lowest person or the weakest person in society can feed and clothe themselves, that means, everyone can feed and clothe themselves. If the lowest, quote unquote, lowest person in society can afford healthcare, that means everyone can afford healthcare, because again, this is the lowest person. And I'm not telling you how we determine who that is, because that's not really my place. But I'm just saying, um, think of it like this: in a classroom, if the lowest score in that classroom is a B, that means everyone else has B's and A's, and everyone is passing. And I'm not talking about those teachers who just pass you for the hell of it. I mean, like, the teacher is legitimately teaching, but they are legitimately dedicated to your growth and your expansion and your learning and your development, and they just ensure that everyone is doing well. So if the lowest person, if the weakest person is the, I don't know, if just the lowest person in that class has a B, then that they are being taken care of. They're still passing. Everyone's passing, right? So just like the society as strong as its weakest link, I've got a story here to kind of help you realize what this means in regards to the shadow. So, do you remember the tale of Achilles and his heel? So basically, he was that warrior from the myth who was very powerful. He was invincible. He was great. What made him invincible was that when he was a baby, his mother dipped him into a body of water. It was the river Styx. Uh, but she was holding him by like his heel. He's a little baby. She was holding him by his heel, and so she dunks him in, but I think she was not allowed to touch the water. You can look up the myth of Achilles and his heel, but she dunks him in, but the only part of his body that does not get dunked is the ankle, like his ankle, because she was like holding him by his foot, right? And so that means his whole body is invincible except for his ankle. And so what happens in the myth is that he's in a war, he's invincible, he's unstoppable, and then someone figures out that his ankle is the one part of him that is not invincible. It is his weakest point. And then he dies because he gets a shot to his ankle, which is where he was weak. So using this story as an example, what part of your shadow do you think is the weakest? Because we talked about how your trigger, your shadow overall gets triggered because, it's essentially full of things that have made you feel wounded emotionally. And so it's just raw and it kind of hurts. And you know, it's it's so easy to trigger because it's so sensitive. It's so sensitive. But I think we all have a couple wounds that are more pronounced than others. Either because it's been reinforced the most by society, or because it was the one that was the most traumatic to us in the process of acquiring that shame. It was the most traumatic to us. That's just a theory. It can, you can leave what you think down below. So with this story as an example, what would you think your shadow's weakest part is? And this could also be the second part of your homework, right? So the first part of your homework would be, why am I, why am I so this? Why am I so that? The list does not have to be like 3 pages long. It could just be, a couple lines, right? And so underneath that, after you make your whole list, then you would kind of write out, what part of my shadow do I think is the weakest? Or if you don't want to use the term weak, you can say, what part of my shadow do I think is the most raw, is the most like, wounded, right? And if you think it's multiple parts, like 2 or 3 things, then feel free to put 2 or 3 things down. And I would really like you to do this before we get deeper into the lesson. So if you want to pause and do that now, and you know what, I actually encourage you to do that now. Open up Office, on your desktop if you don't have a notebook, and just make your list, or open up Evernote and make your list now. Um, in fact, you know what? Rather than telling you to pause, let's do this at the same time, because the other courses give you homework and you're supposed to do this like on your own in your own free time. But with this one, I think I'm gonna open up, or you can open up Notepad. Either way, you just need somewhere to save things so you can keep track of your progress, right? So I have Notepad up. So this is your time now. And also another thing I'm concerned about is, it's easy to say in the moment that you're going to, do these journal prompts. It really is. Usually I would be writing. I think next time we do this course, the next unit, I'll be writing in a journal and you'll get that writing ASMR. But sorry, I'm typing right now. You might be too. It's really easy to say in the moment. Well, as soon as this course is over, I'm going to go write. But you know what? We're going to do the writing portion right now. So actually, your homework is not really homework if you're doing it right now. We're going to do the why am I. So why am I so this? Why am I so that? I really don't think you want typing ASMR, so we may mute. But I'm gonna run through mine pretty quickly. Uh, Probably less than 60 seconds, right? So you go ahead and just do your list now. Oh yeah, and also you can. This is the why am I list, but you can also put like, why do I, like, why do I, So that's another one you can do. So we're still running through the list. This was just an add-on, so you have a little bit more time to do your list. So let's continue. All right, we are back. If you need, sorry, I'm a little bit stuffy. If you need more time to do your why am I list, this would be the point you pause. So you would pause right here and continue your list. So you can pause in 1, 2, 3. All right, and for those of you who are done with your list, we're going to go on to the second part of the homework, which is, so what part of my shadow do I think is the weakest? What part of my shadow do I think is the weakest? And if you have a hard time answering that, you can also do this question. What part of my shadow do I think is the most easily triggered? All right. Did not mean to give you typing ASMR. But like I said, next time I'll be in a journal. So This one should be a little bit quicker, but if you really want to deep dive, go into it. But go ahead and answer this question now. All right. To be honest, this is still kind of homework because this is like you doing the quick version of the assignment. And then when you're by yourself, you should really expand upon these and really sit with yourself. Uh, do it before or after meditation. Like it should be like a process, right? But that's also why I said we might do a week or two in between the courses, just so you have time to navigate your experience. Just really navigate your experience and see how your view of yourself changes, right? Um, for instance, like I'm gonna give you like a little bit of a hint. So like we go by the laugh example. You would put why am I or why do I? You might put, well, why do I have such an ugly laugh? You might be really angry and shameful about it. And then, you do a little bit of, meditation, some deeper shadow work. And then that question will turn into, well, why do other people not like my laugh? Because a laugh's a laugh. So, why do I have an ugly laugh turns into, well, why do other people not like my laugh? And then you kind of realize, well, it's not on me to really understand why others don't like my laugh. Especially, if I'm not around people who can communicate that and they don't know how to communicate it in a way other than like criticism. So it's not really on me to figure that out. So then that question shifts into, well, how do I just become more comfortable with my laugh uh and just move forward from there. So see how that question has kind of evolved given time, and that was just me speed running it. But that's why I'm like we're gonna kind of go through these questions really quickly, and then as you have time to sit in between courses, uh, you see how your questions evolve. Okay, so that was that one. So now using this story as an example, what part of your shadow is the weakest, right? And you can put whatever you want, but does it go back to guilt, abandonment, shame, lack of trust? We're gonna go deeper into different, areas. But could you put anything down? Did you know? So even though there are many ways we could be triggered, it may ultimately be where we hold the most pain that will harm us the most. So if I wanted to trigger that area, which is what a lot of people do once they notice you are insecure about something. Which we go into this in the energy protection course. But once a vulnerability is made known, you can see how it gets triggered. Um you know how some people say that you can't other people can see where you shine and where you excel before you do because you do something and you're like, "Oh, oh, I'm just average at it. I'm just average." Other people know when you are like really good at something and they know when you're really skilled at something, right? And so just like that, they'll probably know before you do. Like they'll see something special in you way before you see something special in yourself. And just like that, when it comes to the shadow, people can often see what you're vulnerable about, before you know that it's obvious. And you really need to notice, when you are in a situation where that you're in a situation that has been fabricated so that that vulnerability is touched upon. For instance, if I even if you dress, I don't know why you would be wearing long sleeves with a sunburn. Or maybe it's just your back's sunburned. Your body's fine, but it's your back that gets sunburned. So it's like you're walking around like normal, your back hurts because it's sunburned, but you're walking around like normal. You will think you're walking around fine, but everyone notices that you've got a weird, kind of walk. When you sit down in the chair, you're favoring your back. So people might notice that your back is injured before you understand that they know, right? And so you got to be careful with triggers because it's like if I wanted to hurt you via your back, I'm going to touch your back. And you're going to be confused, like, well, how does this person know to touch my back? How does this person know to aim there, to do that, to say this, to do that? How does this person know? It's because just like people can see your gifts before you see them, they can see your vulnerabilities before you see them. So it's very important to understand when to angle that back away. Or it's very important, you see, this is the advanced level, but it's very important to, kind of show your back and then see who reaches for it. You know what I mean? But that's advanced. I wouldn't, It was very, important to be able to do that. You show your back and you see, who reaches their hand towards your back, right? Um, so when it comes to your shadow, it's about recognizing sources of discomfort. When you feel a bad emotion, rather than trying to stuff it down, acknowledge it. Well, you know what? I feel, discomfort here, there, wherever. And, you got to acknowledge it. Um, which is, well, why do I think this makes me uncomfortable? And then going back to the wounds. Well, because when I was a kid, somebody said this. Well, because yesterday I put on an outfit that I thought was good looking and I went to the store and people laughed at me. That's the wound. People laughed at me when I went to the store. It made me second guess my fashion sense. So it's about being able to just kind of have that awareness. What slide is this? What slide is this? This is slide 12. So uh remember back here where I said create a creative block, a block in your creativity is having that disconnect from your subconscious and not being able to express what your subconscious wants to say. Whereas a disconnect from your expression would be you not being able to articulate something you consciously know. It's more like an issue with articulation than understanding. So I would say a creative block is more like you have a block with understanding something about yourself. You don't quite know how to express it. You don't know how to even express it subconsciously. You don't understand. To me, this is a block with like understanding something. Whereas expression is when you understand it, but there's a block with being able to articulate. And that's not what the literal definitions are behind these words. It's more like what those definitions will be in regards to this course. If you go back far enough, if you study horror films or monsters in horror films, a lot of monsters were written by authors or filmmakers. Yeah, you're gonna hear some animals outside the window barking. But that's the ambiance. I left the window open on purpose. But if you go back to a lot of horror monsters, they were created as a response to rejection by society, right? So, you've got this monster, you got people with pitchforks, you got people throwing rocks at it, you got people rejecting it. And it's easy to understand why they are rejecting it because it is a monster. It's very easy to understand. Well, it looks scary. There's no empathy there, right? There's a total lack of empathy. Well, it looks scary. Well, look at how, it's very different. There's a fear of the other. And then you delve deep enough into the psyche behind some of these monsters, and it just represents an artist not being able to grapple with the fact that they were rejected for something that they don't quite understand. It might be a mental disability. They might have been born with I don't want to use this word, but, quote unquote deformity. They might have been born with a deformity or like a mental disability, or maybe they were just shamed about something. They were shamed about something or different things to the point that they couldn't really grapple with the rejection by society or by their parents. They couldn't grapple with it. They couldn't understand it. So it was expressed as a monster, which kind of would help because it's like, well, clearly we understand why the monster is being attacked. It's so obvious. There's something so obviously wrong with it. There's something so obviously wrong with it. It's obvious. Keyword on the obvious. And then, you have somebody who's looking at themselves in the mirror and they're like, it is not obvious why people, reject me. It's not obvious why people can't see my personality and heart behind my deformity or mental disability. It's not obvious why people can't just see that I'm a human too, beyond my, medical condition. It's not obvious. And they're grappling with the fact that, what is wrong with me? Because it's not obvious. I don't have fangs. I don't have horns. I don't have claws. It's not obvious. It's not obvious. And I'm struggling with that because aren't I human too? So, they create a monster where it is obvious. They create that perfect world where we only hate things where it's obvious why we hate it, and it's obvious, why the monster is bad, and it's obvious why the monster is, needs to be chased by pitchforks. It's that perfect world where it's obvious that the thing that deserves hate gets hate, you know. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where you get hate, but you didn't do anything. You get hate, but you didn't earn that hate. You know what I mean? And it's that struggle, it's that grapple, you know, which is would be the opposite of a creative block. So because that person, that artist, that writer, that filmmaker could channel, you know, that rejection, that hate into art and art medium, that would mean that they are connected to their subconscious. Whereas a creative block would mean, you're disconnected from your subconscious. But being able to create something means you're connected with your subconscious. You might not always understand the connection, but you are in a way connected. Whereas the expression would be you being able to articulate basically everything I just said, right? So let's go back to the slide we were at, right? So it's acknowledging the wound. So recognizing sources of discomfort, what makes me uncomfortable, especially emotionally. And then you acknowledge the wounds. So you do enough work with your shadow and you are able to take it back. You're able to take it back. Which don't worry, we're gonna do. We're gonna do. And then there's healing the wound. So you heal it. We're not trying to banish these wounds. We're not trying to banish the shadow. We're trying to work with what we've got to be stronger. And then strengthening the area. So, you get made fun of for your laugh. It becomes a source of shame. You realize you have discomfort around your laugh, the way you laugh. You acknowledge it. Well, who's the first person to even make me think about my laugh? Because I couldn't just start hating my laugh out of nowhere. You go back and say, you know what? It was my dad who made fun of my laugh. And then it was those classmates who made fun of it. And then I dated those people. And those people said I had an ugly laugh. And all of them just kind of reinforced it. And that was very wrong of them, right? But it was also wrong of me to abandon myself and abandon, my laughter and to stop laughing, kill my joy just for, all these people's sake. Then there's healing the wound. You know what? My laugh is not so bad. It's okay. And you know what? I'm going to start laughing more. I'm going to start bringing joy into my life. I'm going to start, expressing myself. I might want to be a stand up comedian and make other people laugh and then, laugh on stage with them. So now you're doing that experience. Remember that section where we talked about experiences? How you hopefully you won't just start jumping into stuff willy-nilly, but you'll be able to take that risk to have certain experiences because there would be a time in this journey that you didn't want anyone to hear you laugh, let alone you standing on a stage in front of people laughing. But now that you've kind of worked through your wounds, you're like, well, let me heal it, let me work with it. And in fact, I like to laugh. In fact, I love to laugh. And I always thought I had a bad laugh, but I love to laugh and I love others laughing. So you become a comedian, you go on stage, and then strengthening that area. Turns out, you're a really good comedian. You never knew that, but you're a really good comedian. You always make people laugh. They love you. And in fact, you laugh, on stage, and people find your laughter so contagious, so infectious. Like your laugh just makes people laugh. And now it's no longer people laughing at you. Well, I mean, you're still going to have people doing that, but now it's people laughing with you. And the people laughing with you are always going to like strengthen you. And so you turn your laughter into an area of strength, your livelihood. And that's why I'm like, it's very good to work with your shadow. It's very good to identify sources. You go to the source, you turn it into a tool you can use. And then you go from there, right? Uh, so your shadow self can have wounds in several categories. I'm just going to name a few. We're not going through all of them. But to simplify things, you can have a wound when it comes to safety, like emotional safety, creativity, your confidence, your empathy and loving side, your self-expression, and your intuitive side. So basically listening to your gut. Because if it becomes part of your shadow to not trust yourself and not trust your feelings about, certain things, that just that causes a whole world of a mess. But it comes to the point where you begin putting your fate in other people's hands because it gets trained into you not to trust yourself, not to trust your skills, not to trust your strengths, not to trust your uniqueness. And when you don't trust yourself, a lot of people will be more than happy to swoop in and tell you what you should do, and where you should put your energy and where you should put your talents, right? And sometimes they're meaning well. Sometimes they literally do mean well. So you gotta play by ear. But there's a lot of people who will just tell you where to put your energy, and it may not always serve your best self, right? So intuition is just listening to yourself, saying, you know what, that might be a good opportunity for me. When someone goes, oh, I don't know, that's in a way, people can be, afraid from us and want to keep us safe. There are some people who will say, oh, I don't know, to keep you safe. But then there will be other people who, oh, I don't know, because it's projection. They don't see themselves, getting on that comedy stage, and they don't see themselves, being able to make a crowd laugh, unfortunately. And so that gets kind of projected onto you. And then you go, well, am I that funny? Well, do I need to be up there? And so instead of thinking about your strengths and how good you are at something, you're now thinking from a lack perspective because someone else is. But that's why it's really good to like be in a community and encourage others. It's good to encourage others to view things positively. It's good to encourage others because we all need a lift. We all need a boost, and we all need someone to take us from I don't know if you can do that to yes you can do that to I don't know if I'm good enough to yes you are good. We all need someone sometimes to kind of give us that encouragement and give us that strength. So I wouldn't criticize people who tend to be negative or tend to be fearful because we are all negative and fearful about something. It's about patience. You got to be patient and you got to be, just work through your fears and then, help people work through their fears. But if you can't do that directly, then just try to be a source of like inspiration if you can, because we all need inspiration in something. Just like, someone inspires you, that person has their own inspiration and it's a never ending type of cycle. So we'll systematically be going through each of these things in the upcoming lessons. Starting from the ground up, we will be discussing feelings of safety, and we kind of already touched on it with the 2 homework questions. So your shadow self can be wounded from physical safety being compromised, uh, because when your physical safety gets compromised, there is an emotional type of connection, such as like this. Basically, your physical safety gets compromised. You enter a high adrenaline state. You enter a high adrenaline state enough, it negatively impacts your nervous system in the long run. Your nervous system is dysregulated, uh, and so this is still physical, right? Because your nervous system is a physical body, right? So your nervous system gets dysregulated from a physical safety being compromised, and because your nervous system is dysregulated, your emotional safety can be dysregulated. We're not going to get into how emotions are also chemicals and different imbalances can cause things, but you see how the physical is connected to the emotional, basically. So basically, if you feel like it's unsafe to be yourself, though, this can create a wound, right? So these are some categories. You do not have to answer these questions. You can if you want to. Uh, these are just examples. So when it comes to survival in regards to your shadow, do you feel safe in your surroundings and in your own skin? And we're not really talking about do you feel physically safe? It's more like, do you feel, I think many people can relate to this. If you ever had a hobby growing up and your parents laughed at you or made fun of you or ridiculed you for having that hobby, right? Would you say you feel safe being able to express just having a harmless hobby, right? Do you feel safe to be your true self? Do you feel safe within your relationships? So, are you friends with someone? Are you dating someone? Are you in a class group with someone and you're afraid to speak up? Like in a class group, you're doing a group project. Are you afraid to say your idea because you're afraid people are gonna, make you feel stupid? Um, do you feel safe to give your idea? Do you feel safe to give your opinion in a relationship? Do you feel safe to wear what you want to wear? Um, Looking into feelings like that. So creativity, what do I create? Which I think is a good question. What do I create? And unbeknownst to us, we all create. It doesn't matter if you have followers or not. It doesn't matter if you have viewers or not. It doesn't matter if you've posted it or not. We all create something, right? Uh, what do I create? How do I create it? So some people might paint, like everybody, like everybody's got something. Some people might paint. So when you paint, do you take your time and do like watercolors, or when you paint, are you very intense, right? Are you like really shaking the brush? There's nothing wrong with how you create, but can you acknowledge how, do you create songs? And if you create songs, what are those songs about? It's just an awareness. So what do I create? Do you create songs? And when you create songs, what are they about? Are they sad? Are they about breakups? Do you scream into the mic? Do you, I don't know, wail? you know, how do I feel about the things I create? And it's okay to say I don't know, or I have complicated feelings that I can't articulate right now, because we can work through those. But what do I think is inferred about me from my creations? Now, it's good not to get too caught up in this one, but I do think it's a very important question that can help you. So, what do you think others think about you? So, people don't know you at all. They don't know a single thing about you. They just look at your art. They hear like one song by you. They look at one painting. They see one video about you, just one thing. What do you think people think about you? Don't get too wrapped up in this. But this, in a way, will also go back to how you feel about yourself. Because surprisingly, you will find, spoiler alert, you will find that you project onto strangers. And what happens is, when you do get feedback on your art, right? Some people say, oh, I love this. Some people say, oh, I hate this, right? Depending on what you closely identify as, such as, what do I think people think about me for my art? They probably think I'm stupid. They think I'm a shithead. um when you see compliments praising you, it may make you feel good. But when you see comments saying, well, I think this guy's a shithead, it's going to touch your shadow. It's going to wound you. You're going to go, I know it, right? You're going to ignore like a million nice comments to go, I knew it, because your shadow wound has been validated once again. And I'm not saying this happens all the time, but that's why I'm saying this is a very important question. So with willpower, what encourages me? What drives me? What gives me the will to do more, create more, to live more, to do better? And it's okay to have down times. It's okay to have depressed times, to go, well, I don't have that, right? I don't have that right now. What inspires me to fight? So when things get tough, what inspires you to stay strong? And if you don't have anything, then it's okay, because we're gonna work through it. Because sometimes we all get to that point where it's like, I don't know, I'm just living because to live. I'm just here. I'm not inspired to fight. I'm not encouraged. I don't feel enlightened. I don't feel like I'm doing anything worthwhile. I think we all have that kind of phase, or we have that phase several times in our life. Or maybe you've never felt encouraged. Maybe you've never felt inspired. So hopefully we're going to address this and turn this around and turn it into a power. Remember, every weakness gets turned into a power. So here's one. How would I have protected my younger self in certain situations, right? This is a very powerful question to me, because willpower can go back to how strong you feel, how powerless, you felt in your environment, or how much of a difference you felt your opinion was. So if you felt like you wanted something, or you wanted to do something, and it wouldn't matter anyways because you're not getting it, you're gonna have a low sense of will and power, because it's whatever happens was what happens, which you can take that in a peaceful way. Whatever happens happens, because that's the universe. But that whatever happens in the negative way is kind of like you feel like you have no power, right? So how would I have protected my younger self in certain situations goes back to, there was, situations where you felt powerless. There were situations where you felt what you want didn't matter, and people, just let you be there punching back or whatever. And so how would you have protected your younger self? How would you have been there for yourself? And I'm not going to spoil this one. Just see what this question unlocks for you as you think about it. The next is love. So when do I feel loved? When do I not feel loved? Uh, what do I do to cope when I don't feel, loved? Do I accept or reject love? Do I feel worthy of love? You can want it, but do you accept or reject it? Do you seek it? Do you feel good enough for love? Right? Expression. Do I speak my truth or hold my tongue? And in life, there will be times when you need to speak, and there will be times when you need to hold your tongue. Uh, this is one of the best skills there is to have. I'm starting to get tongue tied. Knowing when to observe and listen, and knowing when to speak. Right. What am I in self denial about? Which is one to really kind of think about all the time. Not all the time, but to think about it uh regularly. But you know what? If it seems kind of negative, you can ask yourself this. What am I forgetting about myself, my soul? What am I forgetting about my soul? What do I need to remember? And it's not about obsessing over it to the point that you don't need to obsess over any of these, because that's over. It's doing too much. But what am I self-denial about? And if you sit there and you're able to go, you know what? It hurt me a lot more than I thought it did. That could be something to be in self-denial about. You know what? I may be grown, but I'm still very upset about those things that happened to me as a kid, and I just can't let them go. That could be something you're in self-denial about. You know what? I loved him or her so much, and I feel like I could have done more, but I know in my heart of hearts there's nothing more I could have done, right? It is being able to, you just got to really dig into that. And when was the last time someone really heard you? When was the last time you spoke from the heart? When was the last time you felt safe to speak from the heart? But when was the last time someone really heard you and picked up on what you were saying, what you were doing? Um, when was the last time, you were able to tell someone really how you felt and felt like they were hearing you and not, taking that information to use for later against you, or secretly going to gossip about it, or something like that, because that's it all goes back to safety and survival too. But when was the last time you think someone heard you and it was just pure loving concerned interaction, right? So intuition, also, what am I in self-denial about? It's just kind of, I don't know, I just really like that question. I really do. I don't know how else to put it. I do. I really like that question. I think you can go far with it. Again, if it hurts, turn every weakness into a strength, make it stronger, right? So how has my spirit been stifled? How have others stifled it? And how do I stifle it? So how does your true self, like your true self, not the self that you've been told you need to be by social media. You need to have this, you need to have this, you need to dress like this, you need to sound like this, you need to do this, because this is a respectable hobby and that hobby is cringe. Whatever. How has your spirit been stifled? How have others stifled it, shamed you? And then how do you stifle it? When you're alone, do you still not allow yourself to, partake in what your spirit wants? So, what beliefs are you holding on to that are not your own? Which, to be honest, is the basis of this whole shadow work class, because these are all beliefs that you have been essentially forced into believing and that have been reinforced by society, reinforced by social media, reinforced over and over again, to the point that you believe they're true. What beliefs are you holding on to that are not your own? Because you didn't really believe you have an ugly laugh. There was a time someone had to tell you they thought your laugh was ugly. That was them, right? And then there was a time someone had to reinforce it because they also thought it. That's still just them. That was never really your idea to begin with. That was never really your thought about yourself to begin with, but you held on to it because that's what we are. Uh, People talk about how receptive we are and how sponge like we are when we're kids, which is where a lot of our wounds go back to, probably childhood, because we're sponges. We rely on what others are telling us is good and bad. If somebody says, don't touch a stove while it's hot, and they yell at you, right? They scream at you when you're about to touch the stove and you jump and you're like, oh my goodness. Usually I wouldn't say you need to be screaming at kids, but if you know that child, that baby is about to burn his hand so bad, you're going to do whatever you can to get them away, which, not hurt them really bad, but scream. If I got to, scream at you real quick, I'm so sorry and I will comfort you afterwards. So me screaming at you does not become like a terrible core memory, and I will try to relay to you how much you don't want to be burned, because that, it leaves a scar. It may, you know, damage the nerves in your hand. It may deform your hand. You know what I mean? You may never be able to use that hand again, depending on how bad you know, hurt it. So, you scream at the child so they don't hurt their hand. And children kind of need, not you screaming at them, but they need that guidance. You know, a child is about to run into the street and a car is coming. You freak out, oh my God, you know what I mean? They see that reaction and they go, okay, running in the street is bad. I don't need to do this. Okay, last time I almost touched the stove while it was hot. You know, mom and dad or older brother or sister yelled at me. So oh my God, I don't want to touch the stove. And while you don't want to traumatize that child, you also don't want them to die. You know what I mean? You don't want them to be hit by a car. You don't. And so children rely on that. And so when children are doing something harmless or they are, you know, just existing and they have to encounter shame or screaming or yelling on that same level, they then begin to associate just their normal behavior with badness. You know, hopefully I'm making this so you can understand. And so, you know, your dad or whatever who said your laugh was ugly might be because when he was a kid, he got punched by a bunch of bullies in school. He got punched and kicked, you know, and they took his lunch money and stuff because he had a quote unquote ugly laugh and you just have your dad's laugh, right? And it wasn't right of him to shame you. It's not, it's still wrong. You know, it's still wrong. But we now have a more informed thing. Like you can still be mad at your dad. You could still, no one's saying you don't need to be, but you can still be mad. But now you have a more informed understanding. Is he was punched, he was kicked, he, you know, he couldn't eat lunch because of his laugh. And he heard that laugh in you, and he had a choice to, you know, encourage you and strengthen you. But unfortunately, his shadow, he hadn't worked through that pain. He hadn't. So unfortunately, his shadow took over. And because it was so filled with shame and guilt, all it knew how to do was transfer that shame and guilt onto you. Now, that's not every reason why people shame and hurt us. Sometimes people are just bloodthirsty. And sometimes we can't trace it back to anything. And I think those are the scariest people. When you can't trace it back to anything. When you see that they had the good upbringing and they had everything, and they look at you and they say, no, I'm not wounded. I have no childhood wounds. I just legitimately want to hurt your feelings. I legitimately want to. And we can get into medical conditions, you know, why people might be like that. But this is not that type of course. But regardless of who it is doing it, that person without empathy or that person who hasn't worked through their shadow, what beliefs are you holding on to that are not your own? It is not your responsibility to heal those other people. You know, you can show them support and encouragement, but if it's at the detriment to your health, mental or physical, then you really need to weigh what's more worth it. And to stop being so much of a martyr, you know, stop thinking that it's noble to die because you've essentially, you know, told your Achilles, and you know, it's good to be vulnerable, but stop thinking it's like the way to live to be Achilles, telling all of your enemies, you know, showing them your vulnerabilities, going, you know, it's my ankle that's weak. Because some people will take that information and they will not use it to be better people. They will not use it to go, oh, you know what, thank you for being vulnerable with me. That helped me. Some people will not. And you gotta weigh the pros and cons of when to be vulnerable and honest and when to, you know, kind of keep your cards close to your chest so they don't see what you're working with, which we dive into in the energy protection course. But it's important to be able to separate what beliefs other people gave you that aren't your own. It's about recognizing situations where that wound is being enforced. And remember the sunburn example where I said sometimes when people know that your back is sunburned and you didn't realize they know, but you catch on because you start noticing who's reaching for your back the most. So same for your wounds. Someone knows you have an abandonment or rejection wound. Sometimes people can notice that that's your sensitivity before you do. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And they will say little things or do little things to trigger it and trigger it and trigger it and trigger it. But they seem harmless, right? So if you had a sunburn and you go, ow, really bad because someone touched you, what will they say? Oh, I just touched you. I didn't punch you. I didn't slap you. I just touched you. But clearly it hurt because that area is wounded, right? And they know it's wounded. That's why they touched it out of everywhere. So sometimes when you have a shadow wound and it's very apparent, people will say, I just said a little thing. I didn't, I didn't really. That's why communication is clear, good, because sometimes you can get really clear with people and realize that it really was an accident. And then some people you will find out that they did it on purpose. So, the person who touches that wound, that shadow wound you have, oh, I just made a little comment. I didn't know. It's very important to. Oh yeah, that's my point. Because people will then lead you to believe that you're too sensitive. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. It's not that you're too sensitive. It's that people are purposely sometimes reaching for the area where you are hurt and sensitive. They will touch you just on your sunburned back and make you believe that your whole body is sensitive. They will touch you just on that emotional wound of abandonment and rejection and then make you feel like you're just overall emotionally too much to deal with. uh Again, we're getting into the energy protection, but I think this is very important for shadow work, acknowledging your reactions to different beliefs you have, and you're acknowledging your really reactions to when that belief feels like it's validated by social media. You see a social media clip on TikTok or YouTube or whatever where somebody has your exact laugh and a group of people are making fun of them. That is not your time to go, oh, I knew something was wrong with me. That's your time to go, oh, another group of people who are bullying someone for a nonsensical reason. You need to get essentially rewire your brain, right? So wisdom. So what has made you doubt your intuition? When you feel something's up in a situation, or people are making fun of you, but you have that feeling like, well, there's nothing wrong with the way I'm dressed, so why are they making fun of me? It's about trusting yourself. There's probably nothing wrong with the way you're dressed. Well, it depends. Some people lack self-awareness, but that's also what shadow work is too. It's getting self-awareness, right? What do you do to feed your spirit? Which is connected to the question above it. And what practices do you follow? Which we're going to dive into, because we're already getting pretty long. So I hope we get to wrap this up, right? Okay, so dealing with things from the ground up, let's begin. So we're really going to get into like the really heavy, like this is what your homework really is going to revolve around, as we wrap up class. So when was the first time in your life that you felt unsafe? I'm not really talking about physically. You can say physically, but I really mean unsafe to be yourself. Like you were a girl and you really wanted race cars for Christmas, and your parents said that's a boy toy, or whatever ignorant things people say, right? Or you were a boy and you really wanted a Barbie doll, and they said you can't get that Barbie doll. That's just ignorance, when people stifled you. And when was the first time in your life that you felt unsafe? And however you interpret unsafe is however you can do it, right? So who came and defended you in that situation? For a lot of us, it was nobody, right? The other parent looked the other way, or there was just nobody else, right? Or the other siblings were too young, or whatever, or nobody else was there. So who defended you in that situation if someone did? Who asked you if you were okay? Yeah. So how did you get over that situation? What did you do for yourself to kind of comfort it? And then, did you go, you know what? Barbies are stupid. I don't need to play with Barbies. That is stupid. Did you go on to like bully someone at school the next day as a kid? You saw a boy with a Barbie doll and he's like, you know what? That's stupid. And you went on to bully him because you had been told it's shameful. Or did you not bully anyone? Did you just isolate and tell yourself it's okay, I don't need it, and you went without? Did you make your own Barbies and hide them? Did you borrow Barbies? Jeez, did you borrow Barbies from friends or your sisters or whoever and play with those in secret? Or did you just do nothing? Did you just cry and forget the Barbies completely? So basically, what did you do to get over the situation? And so overall, how did the entire situation make you feel? And in fact, I wanna rewrite this one. How does the entire I didn't know I spelled defended. How does the entire situation make you feel? Like looking back, especially as an adult or as an older teenager or however old you are, especially looking back, how does that situation make you feel? You know? Knowing that you don't want to perpetuate those same wounds, knowing that you don't want to perpetuate that same ignorance, which is why I'm assuming you're doing shadow work, knowing you're gonna break the cycle. How would the entire situation, how does it now make you feel? You know, if you were in the store now or wherever you were, or if you were in the house now and you saw that situation going down, how does it make you feel? Like, say you couldn't do anything. Say you were like just trapped behind glass, just watching the situation play out in the mall, in the store, at that relative's house, at your own house, wherever you were at school. You're trapped behind glass. You can't do anything. All you can do is watch, right? How does that situation make you feel? You know, you're seeing your kid self being put in that situation. Now, say that glass was not there. Say you could swoop in and interact, right? Say you could swoop in and save the day or change the situation. Um, how would you be there for you? Right? How would you be? Would you say, you know what, don't talk to that kid like that. The kid wants a Barbie, the kid can have a Barbie. You know what, don't talk to her like that. If she wants to laugh like this, nothing's wrong with her laugh, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful laugh, and people are gonna love that laugh one day. If you can appreciate it, people will, love that laugh one day. How would you stand up for that person, right? Now think about uh so the first time you felt unsafe, right? Think about what wound that created. And then think about how it was reinforced, throughout the rest of your life. And I gave you lots of examples about how wounds can get reinforced through social media, through school, relatives, whatever. Music, you start listening to music that shame you for certain things. Like, you can hear in a lot of the music once you start noticing it. You know, at least I'm not da 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 whatever. Um, then think about all the ways now you essentially let yourself down when it comes to that wound. Like, you don't stand up for yourself now. You know, do you still hide your laugh now? Are you still, you think something funny and you still tell yourself, shut up, don't let anyone know? Are you still doing that? Um, so now imagine, remember past you remember current you going back and seeing how past you was mistreated, and all you said you were going to do if you could make a difference. I'd stand up for the kid, and I would do this, and I would do this, and I would take him out that situation. Well, okay, now apply that to you now. So all the ways you kind of aren't there for yourself now, imagine yourself being there, going, you know what, her laugh is beautiful, there's nothing wrong with it. You know what, that boy can play with Barbies. And even if it's not Barbies, it might be, fashion choices. Maybe you are, I don't know, masculine presenting, but you want to dress more feminine, but you're scared what everybody's gonna say, whatever, da da da. Just like you would stand up for your childhood self in that situation with the Barbie. Stand up for yourself now in the present every time you find yourself trying to. Which, be careful, because like I said, sometimes our, shadow protects us, and we got to figure out when to be loud and when to be quiet, hint hint. But at least know that you're being quiet about who you are, for your safety, because you like are around certain type of people, and you're not being quiet about who you are because you're stifling yourself. You know what I mean? So it's like if you have a wound with being intelligent, right? There's a time to show you're intelligent, and there's a time to just let people think you're stupid because whatever. Uh, really, what's important is, I'm stuffy. Sorry, and I can't talk. Really, what's important is knowing. When you're playing stupid, it's knowing how smart you can be without actually believing you're stupid. Um, and just letting people believe whatever, but you're not stifling yourself, right? So, what beliefs about yourself did this first initial situation create? In what ways do you abandon yourself now? In what subtle ways do you reinforce these beliefs? Are you listening to music that, you feel ashamed that you don't have a lot of money? You feel ashamed that you're broke, essentially, which a lot of people are. So I don't even know why. I don't know why brokenness is a source of shame when so many people are broke. It should not be. But in what subtle ways do you reinforce this belief? So if you're hurt that you're like broke, you don't have a lot of money, you're still listening to music saying, if you're broke, ha 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 ha. And it's kind of like you identify as broke. Of course you don't want to stay broke, but you identify as broke, so you listen to music. But it's essentially shitting on what you are for the time being. You know what I mean? For the time being. You don't gotta stay broke. Or, you think you're ugly, you don't like your weight, but you're listening to songs that are like, and F people, you're ugly if you're this certain way. You're still, or you have a favorite YouTuber and that YouTuber just talks badly about people like you in general with whatever traits you have. That's subtle ways consuming media that is very anti you and thinking you're doing something, but you're really not. You know what I mean? And then in what large ways do you reinforce this belief? So it's the large overt ways where you openly just shame yourself and say, yeah, I got an ugly laugh. Yeah, I hate my body. So what large ways do you reinforce these beliefs? Now, how have you reinforced these beliefs through your relationships, your friendships, people you date? How have you, yes, you're gonna hear a few more sounds outside, but they're not too bad, right? Um, so this is all just an exercise in intense self-awareness. It's important for you to perceive every level of the self from childhood through present. And a lot of us with trauma have gaps in memories, and that's okay. Just it's whatever you can remember and work with. So when was the first time you felt majorly let down by a parent or guardian? Again, this is not another question. This is just it goes back to the questions I just asked you, right? Did you tell anyone? Was there anyone around to comfort you? How did you comfort yourself? What did it teach you about yourself? That it was shameful to laugh the way I laughed, that it was shameful to have the body I had, etc., etc. So, uh, feel free to write it out in your journal or on the computer, however you want to write it down. Uh, but this is just a script you can follow if you really want it to be easy, and you're not doing shadow work less good by having to follow like a little script, because especially if you're starting out, don't worry, you're still getting the insight, just follow a script, right? So in my childhood, when blank happened was the first time I felt majorly let down by my caretakers. It also made me feel blank. It made me feel blank about myself and my needs. I felt blank about my caretakers, and I felt blank about the whole world. I got comfort by blank. If I were to be asked if I felt that the issue was resolved, I would say, to this day, I still believe that blank, and I still blank when I get let down, overwhelmed, or stressed. I learned that my feelings blank, and I learned that my needs blank, right? Uh, some people might say I learned that my needs, like if I got a problem, I gotta take care of it. I can't depend on anyone to comfort me because no one's gonna be there to do that, at least not correctly, you know? I learned that my feelings don't matter. I learned that my feelings are just my own problem. I learned that I'm too sensitive, so I learned that my feelings are too much for other people to deal with. Whatever it is. And it's okay to get emotional. I think you're supposed to get a little bit emotional, but it is what it is, right? So this is the second part of the script. But if grown up me could talk to younger me now, grown up me would tell younger me blank. One motherly type thing I would tell my younger self is blank. One fatherly thing I would tell my younger self is blank. If I could do one thing for my childhood self, I would blank. Now, what would I do if an elderly future me came and said those things to me right now? Right? Uh, you can pause the video and copy the script down and then write whatever you need to write. So pause it in 1, 2, 3. Or you know what? I'm just gonna mute the mic a little bit and give you time to write it down. All right. And since this video is getting a little long, you can just pause it. Like usually I would give you about 5 or 10 minutes, but you're on YouTube, you can pause it. Uh, go ahead and pause the second page if you need to follow the script. Uh, you know, so pause in 1, 2, 3. All right. Uh, so finally, what negative things have others tried to make me believe about myself? Hopefully you will link these back to this script. So you can answer this as like in general over the course of your life, but going from this first wound here, uh what negative things have others led to you believing about yourself? You're too sensitive, your needs are stupid, your wants are stupid, things like that, which aren't true, but uh finally, who does it benefit when I believe those things? And if you want to go deeper, who does it benefit when I believe those things? Uh, and do those people actually care about me and my well being? You know, is it an overlapping circle? Is the circle of people who care about me and want me to do better? Does it overlap with a circle of people who benefit when I believe those bad things? Usually, no. I'm a little stuffy. Uh, so you know what I mean? Who doesn't benefit when I believe those bad things about me? How does it benefit others that I believe those bad things? So who does it benefit when I think my laugh is ugly? Who? Like people who don't like you, people who want you to be self-conscious, people who don't want you to experience joy, those people. How does it benefit others that how does it benefit others that you believe those things about yourself? You're quiet. You're no longer competition. You're not, whatever it may be. Uh so that was today's lesson. Next time we're gonna be getting into some deeper things. We're going to be page up. We're going to be getting into different types of wounds, right? We're going to be getting into uh what it means to have a wound related to neglect, what it means when you can't trust people, abandonment wounds, rejection wounds, uh feeling guilty. We're going to do an exercise for you to determine what wound you have. We'd probably have one in each category or several in each category, but it's more about which wound you feel is like, I guess, bothering you the worst, right? The biggest one, the one that fills up your day to day, and you feel like you can't progress. So we'll be doing that. But this was our first shadow work course together. It's a little long, but a lot of good information in there. The next lesson is going to be spaced further out, uh, because you might answer these questions one way, but I really think you need to have time to ponder and think about it. This is not a speed race at all. So that was the first unit, first, why did I say first like that? Our first chapter in shadow work, and I hope you had a good time. Any comments, leave them down in the comment section, and when I open up the Discord, I will be able to discuss further there. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.